on your computer, on your smartphone, on your Wi-Fi radio. We're localwebradio.fm.
Do you enjoy a nice glass of wine? Do you want to know more about wine pairing or the process of how wine is made? Welcome to From the Vine to the Wine with wine expert and connoisseur Matt Brzovic. Now, here's your host.
Hi, I'm your host, Angel Burch, and I'm here with Matt Brzovic, your local wine expert with over a decade of experience. And today, we're talking with Matt about the early history of wines in British Columbia, along with some different varieties grown there. Matt, hi, how are you doing today?
Very good, Angel. How are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, listen, so tell us a little bit about the history of wine.
Well, all through the history of the Americas, wines have first been cultivated by Catholic missionaries, and the Okanagan Valley was no different. Just as in California, the first wines planted in BC were planted by a missionary, Father Charles Pandosi. He came to the Okanagan Valley in 1859, and he was just amazed by the natural beauty, so amazed that he wrote back to the superiors to ask them to send cuttings so he could plant sacramental wine. The vines were planted in what is now East Kelowna, near the present-day site of Summerhill Wines. Summerhill Wines is a big pyramid winery you'll see as you drive into Kelowna on the east side. So to get to Summerhill Wines today, you'll most likely have to travel some distance on Pandosi Street, which was named after Father Pandosi. Now, while Pandosi is looked upon romantically as the father or founder of the BC wine industry, Mission Hill even named an early line of wines Pandosi Cellars after him. There's no record that he ever sold any wine, and really nothing much happened in the BC industry until the end of Prohibition.
So Prohibition ended 1921 and must have given BC some kind of boost in that industry. So what was the true start of the industry in BC?
Well, in some ways, that was the true start. The government opened the first liquor stores in Vancouver, Victoria, Nanaimo, Prince Rupert, Quesnel, Cranbrook, and Denver. Back then, the stores all had curtains on the windows so that children couldn't see in. Even up to the 60s, you'd go into liquor stores and you'd see no products. They were all behind the wall. You write down what you wanted on a slip of paper, handed it to the clerk, who would pass it to the guy waiting behind the wall. And after some shuffling about, your order would come down the small conveyor, you'd pay, and then you'd leave. The selection was modest, to say the least. Growers' Wines was opened in Victoria in 1923 by farmers who were growing loganberries on the Saanich Peninsula on Vancouver Island. At first, it produced sweet port-styled wines, Logana, made solely from loganberries, and Vin Supreme, which was made from loganberries and blueberries.
So, Matt, would it be fair to say then that the BC wine industry really started based on fruit wines?
Well, very, very much so. The next important company came along in 1932, Domestic Wines and Byproducts Company. They came by to take advantage of the great glut of apples in the Okanagan during the Great Depression. And they came out with a line of apple wines, things like OK Red, OK Clear, OK Port, and OK Champagne. Now, needless to say, they didn't impress. Many of these bottles re-fermented on the liquor store shelves and had to be thrown out. By 1933, they changed their names to Kelowna Wines, Kelowna with a C, and grapes were starting to find their way into their products. The owners of Kelowna Wines were some fairly famous people in BC, Giuseppe Gessi, Peter Casorso, Pasquale Capozzi, and W.A.C. Bennett, who would go on to be premier of BC. Incidentally, Kelowna Wines is now considered one of the oldest working wineries in BC. As we go a little farther, we get to 1930, and Eugene and Virgil Riddick. They were two Hungarian brothers, and they planted classic European vinifera varieties near Kelowna. Eugene Riddick was a winemaker for Growers' Wines from 1935 to 1957. And most of the plantings at this time were Lambrusco varieties, native to North America, adequate for sweet fortified and sparkling wines, but they were far too musky and grapey to make high-quality, world-class table wines. All through the 40s, 50s, 60s, wine in BC was made with fruit. Everything from Baby Da to Lonesome Charlie was made almost exclusively with Lambrusco varietals or fruit. We also got Casabella Wines in Mission Hill, which both opened up in 1967.
I'm Angel Burch. I'm here with Matt Brzovic. And after the break, we're going to talk more about the history of wine in BC, along with some of the variety of grapes planted in the Okanagan.
More From the Vine to the Wine with Matt Brzovic after this.
Buying or selling a home on the Semiahmoo Peninsula? Catch up on local market conditions on This Week in Real Estate with Lance and Connie Marples from Sutton West Coast Realty on localwebradio.fm. To schedule a face-to-face consultation, you can reach Lance and Connie at 604-538-8888. That's 604-538-8888. And visit them online at www.surreywhiterockhomes.com.
Are you struggling with a dental or oral health issue? Dr. Norm Ickert from Ickert Dental Implant Center is committed to improving your quality of life with the very best in modern and advanced dentistry. You can catch Dr. Ickert on the Health Channel for the Healthy Smiles Oral Health Show here on localwebradio.fm and at the Ickert Dental Implant Center in Langley at 866-981-1381. That's 866-981-1381.
Hillcrest Bakery and Deli presents Old Time Radio on the Specialty Channel on localwebradio.fm. Hillcrest Bakery and Deli prepares a delicious home-cooked meal, including dessert, just like Mom did. One weekend each month with specialty dinners for Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. A favorite among locals, these individually prepared meals always sell out fast. Pre-order by calling Hillcrest Bakery and Deli at 604-531-1750. That's 604-531-1750.
Now, back to From the Vine to the Wine with Matt Brzovic.
We're back with wine expert Matt Brzovic. So, Matt, okay, how did we get all of these wide variety of grapes planted in the Okanagan today?
Well, a lot of it had to do with a gentleman named Dr. Helmut Becker. In 1976, he toured the Okanagan Valley, and he was intrigued by the potential of the valley. Becker supplied 27 different classic European vinifera varietals for trials that ran from 77 to 85. In what became known as the Becker Project, Pinot Blanc, Auxerrois, Schönberger, Cherub, Ehrenfelser, Müller-Thurgau, and Riesling emerged as the base varietals for the fledgling winemaking industry in the Okanagan. These were varietals that were found to be the best suited for our conditions here. The plants needed to be hardy, dependable, and this was reinforced by another devastating vine kill due to the deep freeze of the winter of 78-79. Whenever vines were killed by frost or other maladies, more and more of them were placed with the hardier Vitis vinifera vine.
So that takes us up to, about the 80s? What happens after that?
Well, the BC government started paying farmers then to replace the old unproductive vines with noble vines from around the world. The Okanagan's first great grape pullout program happened in 79 when 650 acres of Lambrusco grapes were uprooted and replanted. The next big pullout happened in 89 with the Canada-U.S. trade agreement as the impetus for this. Approximately 2,400 acres of Lambrusco were pulled, and that reduced the BC wine industry to about 1,000 acres of primarily vinifera varietals. By this time, many new wineries were opening up and planting classic varietals. 1980 gave us Sumac Ridge and Cedar Creek, two of the more well-known wineries in the Okanagan. Grey Monk came along in 82, and many, many more have sprung up over the years. There are now over 200 wineries in BC, and the list keeps growing. Many of the original varietals still make an appearance now again on a wine label, but the classic Cabernets, Merlots, Syrahs, and Pinot Noirs and Cabernet Francs are the norm. Pinot Gris, Gewürztraminer, Chardonnay, and Sauvignon Blanc are now very common white. This is by no means an exhaustive history. This is more of a snapshot of what has become a passion for British Columbians.
Wow. So Normally, about this time, we would do the wines of the week. But instead of doing that, where can we go to see some of these wines?
Well, that's right. No wines, just wineries this week. I'd actually like to invite our listeners to check out the wineries in their own backyard. There are 4 wineries that operate in the South Langley area. One of them is Domaine de Chaberton, down on 216th Avenue. It's a great little winery that has a superb little restaurant there. You can go in and check out their Bacchus White, which is a fan favorite, fantastic little blend. Then we have Neck of the Woods down on 232nd Street. Beautiful little winery in a cozy little setting, fantastic bubblies you can try there. Then we have Blackwood Lane. They're just south on 256 near Zero Avenue down by the border. You can go see Carlos there, and he'll pour you some of the wines that he crafts from the grapes that he's bought throughout the Okanagan. Township 7, which is on 16th Avenue, also has a winery in the Okanagan on the Naramata Bench. One of the best wines I had there was their Merlot last year. Fantastic. Now, all 4 of these are local and a great way to get into BC wine right in your backyard. Lastly, one of the more interesting places you can stop in it is the Fort Wine Company in Fort Langley. They're keeping the BC fruit wine tradition going by producing some wonderful wine from our very local fruit.
Matt, this is so interesting, but we're not done. We're actually going to do this next week. But we want to thank you for your suggestions for the wineries, and I really encourage our listeners to go and visit those wineries and just try them out. You know, it sounds like a lot of fun. On the next episode, we're going to be talking more about the varieties of BC wines. If you have questions, comments, or recommendations, you can always visit Matt on Twitter at VineToTheWine. And if you enjoyed what you heard today and what you learned, we also invite you to subscribe by clicking on the subscribe link in the show notes. Thanks again, Matt, for being with us, and we'll see you next week.
My pleasure, Angel.
Take care.
You've been listening to From the Vine to the Wine with Matt Brzovic on the Lifestyle Channel on localwebradio.fm.
This episode is a production of Jam Media. For information on hosting your own web radio show, visit jammedia.com. That's www.jambmedia.com.
Local stories, local voices. We're localwebradio.fm.
The opinions expressed by our guest and host on localwebradio.fm do not necessarily reflect the views of Jam Media or its owners. No expressed or implied opinions of any product or service should be considered an endorsement or recommendation of any kind by Jam Media or its owners.